Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Coffee, Candidates, and Conversation. And today we have a really special guest because she is one tough mother. And if you don't know who the one tough mother is, her name is Jerri Green, and she is running for Tennessee House of Representatives for District 83. And we are delighted to have her on our show. Good morning, Miss Green. How are you?
Good morning, Mr. Harris. I'm doing okay. Got your coffee?
I have my coffee.
I have mine.
It's in a classic SCDP mug.
Oh, look, mine is in a Gibson's Grizzly mug, so we're both representing.
Nice. I wish I had some Gibson donuts right now.
Always. Blueberry glazed, yes.
Yeah, I could do one or two, trying to stay in shape a little bit.
Fight in shape.
Exactly. So I know our time is limited because you're a candidate and you've got to get out and get busy and continue to work your base and get our voters out to the polls and let people know who you are. Prepare for the general because you are running unopposed in the primary, which means you are going to be the next state representative for District 83 after you win in the general. So let's tell the people some more about you. We know about your campaign. A lot of people know about that, and we'll talk some more about where you stand on some issues. But tell us something about Jerri Green, about one tough mother that we can't Google, that we can't easily find on Google, that we wouldn't find or wouldn't learn from your campaign page or campaign materials, and that we wouldn't learn about you even if we worked with you in your professional capacity.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned work because I am a recovering attorney and I do work at a nonprofit now doing community engagement. But I started working when I was 13 years old, and I have had just about every job you can imagine. I have answered phones at hair salons. I have been a lifeguard at a water park at Venture River. Do you remember Venture River?
I remember it.
I may have just dated myself. I have been a typewriter inspector. And what's great about all of that is most of those jobs were minimum wage, right? Mm-hmm. And it taught me a lot about hard work. It taught me a lot about the dignity of work. It taught me about livable wages. And whether it was doing human rights work in Africa or working for my dad on his job sites, helping paint or lay tile, whatever it is, it taught me that sometimes you just have to get in there and do it and throw your whole self in and try new things. And so I've done just about everything. If you can imagine a job, then I've probably had it. So that might be something that people don't know about me.
That's awesome right there. I love it. And, that was kind of sort of flip that coin even more because everybody, like I said, knows that you're a candidate and that you're running. And one of the interesting things about it is that candidates, when you become a candidate, you know this all too well, probably already. Your life becomes the sum of your constituents' concerns. And often we as constituents sometimes forget that even the candidate is also a voter. So let's take your candidate head off for a moment, set to the side, and let's talk as a voter. As a voter, what is the single most important issue on the table for you?
To me, it is the epidemic of gun violence that is facing our nation and our children. I have 3 children, and I have had gun violence impact my life 3 times. Before I was born, my grandparents died in a gun violence incident, and my best friend was murdered. And just last year, I lost a colleague to gun violence. And I'm not special. I'm not unique. It just speaks to the fact that this problem is pervasive. And when I have a 3-year-old who's already learned how to stand on a toilet and be quiet, when I have a daughter who gets notes at home that say she shouldn't wear light up shoes to school because an active shooter might find her in the hallways running away for her life, then I've got to do something. I've got to step up. I've got to speak out about it, and I've got to find solutions because my legacy, my special interests are my 3 children, Bo, Vivian, and Wilder. They are 3, 8, and 10. They are the reason that I'm running. And this is the problem. This is the biggest issue facing their generation, having lockdown drills the way that we used to have tornado drills. Mm-hmm. That's terrifying. That's not the world I want for my kids. So to me, that's my biggest issue.
Well, I definitely understand, and I sympathize with you deeply. Especially in terms of having so many people close to you impacted by gun violence. I think there's a connection between what happens on the side of violence in terms of increases in crime, and also education and opportunities for self-development and a community investment. So looking at that parallel, let's sort of delve into this connection with education and the importance of providing a balanced resource in that way. And so let's talk about education first. What do you see looking at the education system and the way we're providing that developmental service for people in Tennessee? What do you see as like our biggest opportunity in that area, or even if not the biggest opportunity, the biggest problem?
Let me start by saying we have exactly 0 mothers of school-age children in our state legislature. So when the people who are making these laws make these laws, they don't have skin in the game like I do. I have 3 kids. I'm a product of public schools. They go to public schools. And so I am a huge believer in fully funding our public schools and our public school teachers. They need more help, not less. And that trickles down throughout the community. My district has great public schools. We have White Station, we have Germantown, Houston. There are models out there where public schools can be the top in the state, right? If we have the right investment from both the government and from parents and from students and from teachers. So I would like to bring that model across our state, across our county, across our city, because for me, I will tell you this, education was my key to the American dream. My mom and I used to joke that we were so poor, we were just po. We could only afford the first 2 letters. And the way that I have been able to afford the nice home that I have now and the lifestyle that we have now is because I worked hard at White Station High School, and then I worked hard at UT Knoxville, and that got me to Georgetown Law School, where I worked hard again. And so education to me was truly a key to being able to do what I wanted to do. And when I left Georgetown Law School, I immediately went back into public service. I became a public defender because I thought people who grew up poor like me deserve to have the very best advocates in the country. So I wanted to, I don't want to say speak for people who have no voice. Everyone has a voice. Not everyone has a megaphone, right? Or a microphone, whatever. So I wanted to do that. But that's why education is so incredibly valuable to me, because in my own personal life story, it has made a difference that will make a difference in my children's lives, right? Mm-hmm. And if we can do that for everyone in our community, what's the saying about treating the least among you? Mm-hmm. That's what we should be doing. And we should be making sure, I know all the parents like me that have suddenly also become homeschool teachers, right? We have a new appreciation for the value, the love, the hard work that our teachers do to educate our children, and the kind of resources and backup that our schools need. And as far as I'm concerned, that's where we should be putting a lot of our focus. But unfortunately, we have a legislature full of people who are very disconnected from the realities of what is needed.
Mm-hmm. And you really just touched on an important concern that I have and that a lot of voters have. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, and that is, what would be your strategy or approach to addressing the digital divide, or trying to create some digital equity, since we know now that at least in Shelby County, the likelihood is that schools will be all virtual. And so, you have students who have devices and have internet at home. And then you have a lot of families that don't have devices, don't have internet access.
Yeah, I think this is the biggest issue facing us right now as schools start virtually across our community. And it terrifies me because I know that, we had enough iPads and laptops, and sometimes I would use my work laptop to give to my daughter while my son used a different device. That's a whole issue. The internet is a whole issue. But there's another thing that people really aren't talking about, and that is a lot of people in our community are not technologically literate, right? I used to be a public defender, and I knew a lot of kids who were being raised by their grandmothers, right? And if you asked grandma to get on a Zoom, you might as well have given her Chinese homework and asked her to help with it. It's not just about having a hotspot. It's not just about giving a kid a tablet. It's about having somebody there to walk them through. Here's how you turn it on. Here's how you turn in your papers. Here's how you work through that. And not everybody is going to have either a parent at home because they might be an essential worker and be out working, or even if they're being raised by somebody else that is of an older generation that's going to be competent enough to help them. I am terrified about what this means for so many in our community and how it could further divides, whether it's poverty, whether it's racial divides. This is something we have to be addressing, and we have to be thoughtful about it. And the way to do that is to go into the communities and ask them what they need. Right? We don't need to assume that we know what everybody needs. Like, well, oh, here's your laptop, and give a laptop to everybody. Well, that might not be what they need. What they might need is a 2-hour class for parents to learn how to get their kids to be able to turn in their homework. That might be a more useful thing. So we need to go into our communities and listen to the people that are going to have to be teaching our kids this year. I know our teachers are going to be virtually doing probably 10 times the work that they were doing. Right? Because they're redoing all of their lesson plans and how to get these ideas and information across to their students. But we also have to do the teachers at home, the people like me. How are we interacting and making sure that the process is going as planned?
Yeah, and I can appreciate mobilizing towards an online platform and virtual learning situation, because we just had our Unity Gala, and I can tell you, it takes 3 to 4 times more planning to do something virtually. You have to consider details down to another level of specifics, and you really, you got to storyboard it all the way out. And we were so excited that we were able to produce that, push that event forward. We know we have a lot to learn from it, but we're happy, and with the results, it was a success. But it takes real work. And then also having taken, master's level classes online, I think learning online is actually more difficult for a lot of people who actually benefit from the in-person connection when receiving instruction.
Especially children. I've taught classes. When I was in law school in DC, I taught in an inner city school. I taught a survey law course for a year. And we had a mock trial competition and everything. And the learning we were able to get in person, the connections we were able to make, they were able to grasp those concepts better, I feel. I also was an online teacher. I taught criminal law and juvenile law for about 8 years online for people getting their associate's degree. And it is a lot of work on the student. You kind of have to be self-motivated. And there's people who either get it or don't. There's not a lot of in between. And a lot of it is just learning the new technology. Everything is different. Everybody's got a different platform and way to do things. But it is also hard not to just be able to raise your hand and ask your teacher or talk to your peer in the same way that you would in the classroom, right? So it's all going to be very hard. I hope it is temporary. I hope we find a vaccine and we're able to get back in the classrooms. But until then, we need to be thoughtfully addressing this. And I think that the superintendent here in Shelby County has been doing an amazing job trying to get input from a lot of people. But I just want to make sure that we go into communities on a deep level to make sure that we are truly addressing their needs, not superficially addressing their needs.
Right. And before we take a quick break from part one and conclude part one, I want to ask just a straight out question to you, just straight out: school vouchers, yes or no?
Absolutely not. No way. There's no way that we should be taking public dollars and giving them to private schools. Our public schools are already woefully underfunded. We have a reading rate for the third grade level. About a third of our kids can read on the third grade level. That's shameful. I mean, we don't need less resources. We need more. So I am absolutely 100% against vouchers.
Yeah. And this is actually, I guess a non-political question, more like an education kind of teaching kind of question. I believe it's third grade that the point where you stop learning to read and began to read to learn.
It is, and you know what else it is? It's the marker where the people who plan out the number of prison beds we'll need in the future, they look at that reading level and the failure rate to plan out how many prison beds we'll need in the future. So it's an important skill that we need to get taken care of at an early age if we're going to have future leaders, future workers, or if we're going to have future prisoners.
Very well stated, everyone. You're watching Coffee Candid. It's a conversation with our very special guest, who again is one tough mother, and her name is Jerri Green. We're going to take a pause break for a moment, but we'll be back with part two and the beginning of our lightning round. We'll ask tough questions, and we'll post an issue, and one tough mother is going to tell us how to knock those issues down. So thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back.
I am Michael Harris, Chairman of the Shelby County Democratic Party. I'm here to share an important message with you today, and that message is everyone can make a difference, and one vote can be the difference. So raise your voice and vote. And remember, July 30th is the last day to request an absentee ballot. So if you want to vote by absentee ballot, be sure to go to shelbyvotetn.gov and request your absentee ballot. And remember, if you request an absentee ballot, you really need to use it, because if you decide to go to the polls after requesting an absentee ballot, you can vote, but it will be by provisional ballot, and your vote may or may not be counted in this upcoming election. So remember, raise your voice and vote.
Thank you for tuning in. We're back. It's part two of Coffee Candidates in Conversation. And we have our very special guest with us today, who is, again, one tough mother, and her name is Jerri Green, and she's running for Tennessee House of Representatives for District 83. And so now it's time for us to jump into the lightning round. And what this round is about is we want to try and tackle as many issues as possible. And so we're going to just post an issue on the screen, and Ms. Jerri Green is going to talk about it, share some insight on it. If there's an issue now that you want to go deeper into, we can do that. You just say the word, and we can go from the lightning round to the slow lightning round, and talk about that issue, because we want people to hear what you have to say about these issues. Fair enough?
Yes, let's go.
All right, let the lightning strike. Boom. Expansion of Medicare, Medicaid. We said no to $1.4 billion a year. What are your thoughts about that?
I find this utterly ridiculous, especially in the time of a global pandemic. It was unfathomable before. It is unconscionable now. I cannot believe that we have millions of people suffering throughout our state, and they are being denied access and affordability of health care. So whether it's the block grants or the expansion of Medicare, Medicaid, I think that it's something that needs to be a top priority of our legislature if they truly care about their constituents.
I'm with you. Well, let's go ahead and lay it out, because we know our country now is dealing with something that is unprecedented, and we all know what the cause of that is, and I think it really exposes the lack of healthcare coverage in the state of Tennessee and all across America. If you could craft Tennessee's response to COVID-19, how would you lay it out?
Let's start with some easy things. We should have a mask mandate. That's very simple. We should also work towards better protections for unemployment and for our small businesses to make sure that workers can get paid and businesses can stay afloat. Mm-hmm. I personally have friends who have lost their jobs or had their jobs cut back. I have friends who own small businesses who are shuttering their doors for the second time and are not sure whether they're going to be open. We need to address that. We also obviously need to put more funding into public schools. As I've mentioned before, this is something that is going to be sort of one of the front lines of the battlefield of COVID. We need to make sure that they have everything they need, whether it's masks or hand sanitizer or digital instruments, whatever it is they need. We need to make sure our teachers are having that. But I also think we need to step back and have a deeper discussion about what is happening with parents like me, working parents, who are now trying to juggle a 40-hour-a-week job and homeschooling one or more children all at the same time. And what have we done as a society to support families, working parents, moms? You know, most of this is following to moms like me. Do we need to have a one-time tax credit for childcare if you're having to bring in somebody into your home to help you juggle all of this so that you can keep your job? Because we don't want mothers especially to be pushed out of the workforce because of the pandemic and fall further behind in the pay inequality. Mm-hmm. Do we need to set up a larger social structure where, you know, like AmeriCorps or something, but for in-home childcare, so that we can address the needs of people that have to go to work, that are essential workers, but need childcare, but there's no childcare centers open. This is a larger issue that we just keep pushing aside, that we keep using our schools as childcare. And whether it is universal pre-K or universal childcare, better paid family leave, we need to be getting experts in right now to talk about this issue in a deep way so that parents have solutions going forward and not having to figure it out while they're in the middle of a pandemic and an emergency situation. So that's what I would do.
I think that's wonderful. And I think, you know, you pretty much have described that we have a pandemic unemployment crisis and a pandemic employment crisis.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a very interesting parallel and a very dangerous one as well. So I like the plan that you have, but let's go even deeper then, because we have a workforce that's working, that, you know, full of essential workers, and we know one thing is for sure: people are still struggling, even for those who have a job and are still working. So, what is a livable wage?
Well, let me start by saying that the talking points that are coming out of the GOP and the Republican Party, that people are staying on unemployment because $600 a week is just too much to turn down, is utterly ridiculous. Do that math. That's about $31,000 a year. If that really is too much to keep you home and not work, then you're being paid a poverty wage. And that's not okay. We should start at the bare minimum of a $15 an hour wage. And that will help raise other wages on up the ladder. And that will finally get us to an adjusted cost of living for where we should have been. Because we have not raised the minimum wage in many, many years, over a decade. And the cost of goods, your home, your food, I mean, I'm buying a lot of groceries with 3 kids home these days, right? All of that has increased, but we haven't increased the wage. And so people are having to work one or more jobs to try just to get by. There is a whole population of our country right now that are falling under the threat of eviction. And that's because, whether it's through unemployment or whatever, they haven't been able to make that rent, right? And now it's about to come due. That's a lot of Tennesseans, actually. There's a lot of Tennesseans that live paycheck paycheck to paycheck and are renters. And we're about to see a huge crisis. I know in my work at the Community Legal Center, there's a backlog of 9,000 cases that they're trying to get people evicted. Well, then what happens? Then they're out on the street, and then we taxpayers are going to have to pick up the tab. We need to be thinking about bigger structural solutions. And part of that starts with a livable wage. And part of that starts with what I talked about at the beginning, believing in the dignity of all work. You know what this pandemic said? It said, whatever you think is a hero and an essential worker, it's also your grocery clerk. It's also somebody who delivers your mail. You know, it's not just doctors and police officers. Those people are heroes too. But you have to understand that there are a lot of people that help make this world run. And I'm hoping that on the other side of this, we see how interconnected we all are. And part of that is giving everybody the wages they deserve.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Well, then let's talk about this. I know you want to do a good job and represent us, as a part of the unit that serves not only Tennessee, but the areas that make up Shelby County. But getting there and getting things done are two different things. 72 Republicans and 27 Democrats. How do you get things done?
Right. Well, it's going to have to take some incremental steps, and it's going to have to take some compromises. And my training as an attorney is perfect for this. I used to spend every single day in a courtroom with a stack of 30 cases and have to go to the same DA and the same judge and work out compromises. And, there were some times when you can't work anything out and you go to trial and you fight, right? And so there will be absolutely some times where there is no room for compromise. Let's be clear. But when you can work together, and, when you're having to work with the same person over and over again, the one thing that you have to have is honesty and trust. And so my word is my bond. I say what I mean and I mean what I say. And you don't ever have to question that part of me. So if I come to you and say, I really need this, I mean I really need this. Or if I say, we might could back down a little on this, let's see where we can meet. I am about getting things done. And sometimes there's a difference between perfect and ideal and done, right? But I'm a practical person. I'm a mom. Sometimes we just have to get things done. And I want to be able to work with people across the aisle. I have my whole life to get what is needed, what is best for the people I'm representing, just like I did in the courtroom.
Amen to that. Well, let's kind of transition a little bit. Let's talk about something interesting, really, really interesting. Legalization of cannabis.
Okay, let's talk about that. I think that there are definitely some strides we need to make in this area, especially as a former public defender. I saw entirely too many cases that came through that were nonviolent, personal use offenders, and it was targeted more majorly at minority communities, Black and brown folks in our city. And I guarantee you there are white folks doing the same thing, but they're not being arrested for it and brought down to 201 Poplar, getting a mark on their record, which then keeps them from getting jobs and being productive members of society, right? So if there was a way that we could stop that, I know Nashville's district attorney has stopped prosecuting for personal use. I think that's a step in the right direction. I also think that we need to consider in the land of St. Jude all possibilities for people that need it medically, right? There are children, there are families out there suffering, and we need to make sure that if this is the thing that would stop their suffering, that we make it available to them. It is also a booming industry, right? And it can provide much needed tax dollars to help do things like fund our schools better, improve our roads, support greater initiatives throughout our state that help our community. So I think there's a lot of positives to legalizing marijuana, and we should definitely be looking into it.
Okay. Well, I have two more questions. One will be our big kahuna at the end, but I want to throw this topic up, then we'll get to the big one. Heartbeat bill. Thoughts on that?
Look, I'll be honest with you. I am really tired of my government continuing to pass legislation that is unconstitutional on its face. I know people think there's a lot of lawyers that are politicians, but there's clearly not enough that understand what the Constitution is. This law, just like the voucher law, just like vote by mail, have all been struck down in court almost immediately and repeatedly. And yet our governor and their attorneys are continuing to waste our tax dollars and time and resources fighting for these unconstitutional bills. So this bill, the heartbeat bill, is the most extreme in the nation. There is no exception for incest or rape. Not only does it take away the autonomy of a woman, but it doesn't take into consideration what the Constitution, what the already established precedent law says that should not be limited. I deeply believe, as a woman, as a mother, as somebody who has carried 3 pregnancies, that decisions around this area, politicians have absolutely no business being in. It should be between a woman and her doctor, if she chooses her partner, her faith leaders, her family. But I, as a representative, don't need to be in that room with her making that decision. These are heart-wrenching, terrible choices that people are facing when these sort of decisions come to the forefront for them. So I don't want to impose anything on what is already an extremely difficult time. I want to be supportive of women and their rights, and I think that the case law is already so clear that we don't need to be wasting our taxpayer dollars and time fighting for something that's going to be struck down anyway. So that's where I stand on the heartbeat bill. You know, it is especially disgusting that they passed it in the middle of the night with no audience. They knew what they were doing. And it was shot down within 45 minutes. There was an injunction on it. So we just don't need to be in the business of doing this one way or the other, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, I love it. I love it. And so here's the big one. Are you ready?
Try.
All right. So we ask each candidate that comes on the show to do a SWOT analysis of your district. So looking through the lens as a legislator, what do you see as the greatest strength for District 83, the greatest weakness for your district? Where do you see the biggest opportunity, and what would you identify as the single biggest threat to your district moving forward from where it is today to where it can be tomorrow?
I think our greatest strength is the people that live here. I moved into District 83 a little over a year ago, and I can tell you from personal experience in my own neighborhood, the people are warm and they are generous. Just this past week, I was doing a collection for Hope House for shampoo and soap. They put out a call, and so I posted it on our neighborhood website and said, hey, does anybody want to help? And my porch was full. I had to fill up my trunk and take bags and bags. And that's the kind of people that live in District 83. They're deeply caring and they want to give back. I think our greatest weakness can be, so District 83 covers a little bit of Memphis and a little bit of Germantown. And I think there's a weakness in trying to divide those areas, separate them. We're very connected, and I mean that in our spirit of being Memphians and having grit and grind and all of that, but also our economies and our businesses. I think any divide that we put in between those two areas is a weakness for us. We need to not be in our own silos. We need to stay connected and understand that high tide rises all boats, right? Opportunities, I think there's great opportunities to sort of let young families like mine know what a wonderful place this is to live. I think that whether it's Germantown or East Memphis, to know that we have great schools, to know that we have wonderful small businesses, delicious food, that you can let your kids go ride their bikes like we did without fear for their safety. You know, just go ride in the neighborhood, go over to your friend's house. That sort of stuff happens here. My neighbors bring over hydrangeas and I give them, you know, something in my garden. It's a really amazing community. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity to sort of advertise that to younger people. Our biggest threat is the same threat for the country, for the state, and for our community, and that's COVID. It is easily the hardest thing that we've ever faced as a nation. And the great thing I know about this district is we're good at hard things. And we are good at coming together and being supportive of our community. You need only look on the Germantown bulletin board and how one woman has organized meals for the frontline workers at hospitals for hundreds of days now. And it's all been donations, people giving back, supporting these people. So we are going to have to do some work around schools, around unemployment, around supporting small businesses, and around healthcare. I mean, people's lives are literally on the line. So it's a huge threat. But I do believe that the people in this district can meet that threat head on.
Okay, I like it. Well, everybody, you have heard the wonderful perspectives and ideas of one tough mother. And her name is Miss Jerri Green, and she is running to represent District 83 in our Tennessee House of Representatives. And we are honored and excited to have you on this show. And we look forward to you moving forward and taking that blue power and laying the smackdown on the GOP in the general, because we know you'll be representing us in the House, and we know that you're going to represent us well. But what we're going to do here is make a few announcements and share a little information, and then we'll give you an opportunity to close us out with the last word. That cool?
Yes.
All righty. Listen, everyone. All of us can make a difference, and one vote can be the difference. It is very important that each of us get out and make our way to the polls. The best way I think that we can do this is to not only vote, but to make sure everybody within our circle of influence gets out to vote. If you have a friend that you talk to, make them get out to vote and encourage them to tell their friends to get out to vote. It's critical, and that's the way we continue to make progress, and the way that we can really move Shelby County forward and the state of Tennessee forward. Because when we elect leaders that have our best interests at heart, then we get better outcomes. We have better laws, and we have leaders who we can have confidence and faith in. So let's get out to vote. The deadline to request an absentee ballot is August 6th. You know what? I'm sorry. That's a typo. Let me fix that right now. I'm going to fix it on the fly, everybody. The deadline to request an absentee ballot is, and this is me using technology in a new way.
See, technology's hard.
Yes. The deadline to request an absentee ballot is July 30th. Election day is August 6th, okay? Now, if you have requested an absentee ballot and you haven't received it, you need to call the election commission. You need to email the election commission and take every step possible to get that absentee ballot in hand. I know it may defeat the purpose of requesting an absentee ballot if you have to go in person, but if it comes down to it, do what's necessary. Now, if you already have the absentee ballot, send it in now. Go ahead and drop it in the mail. Don't wait, and let's get it done. And lastly, I want to add that we have a responsibility to make sure that every dollar that's available to the state of Tennessee and that will be funneled down to Shelby County actually gets here. So how do we make that happen? We need to do our part by coming to our census and completing the census survey. Okay, so make sure you complete the census. We want to make sure our district lines are drawn fairly and that all the resources available to Shelby County make it here so that our communities can become more healthy and have the resources we need to continue improving Shelby County and the city of Memphis. All right. And so Jerri Green, if you'd like to reach her, you can, or learn more about her, you can visit her website, which is www.jerrigreen.com. And you see that across the bottom of the screen. And now her Facebook page, it is www.facebook/JerriGreen for 83. all right, /Jerri Green for 83. And you can find her on Twitter by going to twitter.com/Jerri Green for 83. And we're going to close out with the final word from one tough mother.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and for giving me a chance to talk to the people of Shelby County about what I believe and what I think is important. It's funny, you didn't ask me the one question that I get asked most often since I've been running for office, and that is, how can you run a campaign with 3 small kids at home? And my answer is always, how can I not? I'm telling you, I feel like the house is on fire and my kids are inside. And I know I'm not alone. There are a lot of mothers and parents and community members that are just tired of this circus. You know, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or an independent, at this time in our country, it is clear from the top to the bottom that we need new, better leadership. Now, I think moms are pretty good at cleaning up a house and a mess they didn't make, so I might be a little biased. But I do hope that you understand I bring a certain skill set and a certain belief, a deep belief that we have to make our community and our state better. And I do that because I care about my children. I care about your children. And I want to make this place better for all of us. So I do hope that you will come by our website. I do hope that you will sign up to volunteer, to chip in if you can. Every bit that you do helps us get to victory in November, and that helps us bring compassion and common sense, values like decency and integrity back to our capital. And I think that's what we need at this time. So I am so grateful for the time to talk to you today, and please reach out if you have any questions. My campaign, my team will be happy to talk to you.
All righty. There you have it. You heard it from Jerri Green, who's one tough mother, that she is in it to win it and to fight for us all as the state representative for District 83. So when you go to the polls, make sure that you select Democrat as the ticket that you're voting on, and make sure that you click that box that says Jerri Green. And remember, there's one tough mother in the race, and her name is Jerri Green. Thank you so much for being on the show, and I'm looking forward to seeing great things from you, and I can't wait to continue to work with you.
You too. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day.